I woke up today to reports that the Pac-12 may be officially dead within the next 48 hours, guys. I'm going to go through it all. Right now, we've got Arizona. It's virtually confirmed. They're joining the Big 12 Conference. Arizona State, about a 95% chance they follow. And then there's possibly a 16 team. That's kind of a mystery. Right now, seems like Utah or maybe UConn for that number 16 spot in the Big 12. That would get them to 16 total teams along with the SEC and the Big 10. We've got this. Sources, any potential changes in the Big 10 are not expected to impact Notre Dame's view on independence. So it's really not surprising. Notre Dame, they've been quiet. They plan to remain an independent for now. And the Big 10, it looks like the stuff I learned last night, they're going to 18 teams, but they are not going to 20 teams. Not yet. The Big 10 should get both Washington and Oregon, but Stanford and Cal are not following. Craziest part of this is that Stanford could have had a guaranteed spot in the Big 12 if they would just reach out. Their pompous nature is going to relegate them to nothingness if Big 10 indeed passes on them. So, yeah, if I'm Stanford, it's a tough situation. You're just not a culture fit with the Big 12. I think Stanford views the Big 12 as a conference that might be lower than their standards in terms of academics, so that's why they're not interested in joining the Big 12. Them getting into the Big 10, it would be an absolute huge coup considering how bad their football and basketball program have been recently. Imagine getting into the Big 10. You could use your academics, and I think maybe there still is a slight chance they can get into the Big 10 if the Big 10 takes both Oregon and Washington, but you would figure if they take those two schools, they've already got the West Wing completely covered, and there's really not a big need for Stanford outside of the academic appeal and the prestige of it. And Stanford, I'm sure the Big 12 would have been definitely open to adding a team of that power in terms of academics. But Stanford, I don't think they think it's a culture fit with the Big 12. They're very likely at this point, I would say 70% chance they go independent. Maybe there's a chance there's a merger with the Mountain West, and you get kind of the Pac-6 merging with the Mountain West after the four quarter schools all go to the Big 12. That could be something that happens. Either way, there's really not a good option for Stanford right now outside of getting lucky with the Big 10, but at this point, it seems like the Big 10, they only want to go to 18 teams and not 20. Maybe Stanford is under the impression the Big 10 does this every year. They'll add two teams, and then they'll say they don't want anyone else, and then eventually they'll let us join, because you would think the Big 10 is probably not done. You would think 20, the 20 number is what the Big 10 is looking at. If they add Washington and Oregon, they would be at 18 teams. Arizona may bolt for the Big 12. The Big 10 is scouting Oregon and Washington to join USC and UCLA. San Diego State may bolt the Mountain West. No, I don't think San Diego State is leaving the Mountain West at this point unless it's some type of merger with the Pac-12. FSU openly talking about leaving the ACC, yet we still entertain coaches, ADs, and legislators complaining about the transfer portal ruining college sports. Seriously. Oh no, yeah, the transfer portal has definitely ruined college sports. It's made it a free agency league, but I think, those two things aren't really all that comparable, but you understand the point, I guess. Here is our ESPN story on Arizona's discussions with the Big 12 and a deal expected to be finalized soon per ESPN sources. Details of what has transpired for Arizona and what's next for Arizona State, Utah, Oregon, Washington, and the Pac-12. So yes, it seems like we don't know exactly when, possibly today, Arizona's move to the Big 12 could be official, but there might be a bit of a hang-up depending on what Arizona State wants to do and how much time it ends up taking them. Also hearing the Arizona Board of Regents is trying to slow walk Arizona official announcement to give ASU time to get their house in order, so don't expect as quick a turnaround as Colorado's announcement. It's a little bit muddled, it looks like, because Arizona and Arizona State want to virtually announce at the same time as long as Arizona State's on board. Arizona is coming regardless. Arizona State is at 95% chance. And the meeting today should finally be the last nail in the coffin there. Oregon has told the Big 12, no thank you, according to their sources. This clears the way for a 16th edition. When Arizona State joins to follow Arizona, they will be at 15 at that point. So now it comes down to who is the 16th team. Originally, the Big 12 wanted they wanted Oregon. Oregon, they're headed to the Big 10 very likely. So now, as we sit here for the Big 12, it looks like you're down to possibly Utah or UConn. And I would go probably an 80-20 that it's going to be Utah, 20% chance it's going to be UConn. Certainly, UConn has an amazing basketball program, but I just don't think with where they are currently, I mean, where else is Utah going to go unless it's a mystery crazy thing and the Big Ten is interested in them? It just does not seem likely because Washington is not even talking to the Big 12 right now. They've already virtually been guaranteed a spot in the Big Ten. And also, it's been thought of Washington is just going to follow whatever Oregon does. And you see Oregon telling the Big 12, thank you, but no thanks. The Big 12 obviously wanted Oregon. Oregon wants to go to the Big 10. No, they will not be getting the full share from the Big 10, but it's still going to be a massive payout, especially in the coming years. That is the biggest media contract the Big 10 has, bigger than the SEC. Part of the reason is because they signed it 1 year after the SEC. But either way, guys, the situation right now, I do expect the four corner schools to get finalized. Let's just say what's going to happen this year, because it always happens in the summer, and then once we get late August, there's probably going to be no more realignment news. Everyone focuses on the season. It's happening a little bit later this year than last year. Last year it was midsummer. Now everything's coming out late July, early August. Let's just say this is what's going to happen the rest of this year, very likely. What you're going to get is you're going to get Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, all within the next few weeks announcing to go to the Big 12. The only real speculation is it going to be Utah or UConn? And I think it's going to be Utah. I believe UConn has a buyout as well that they have to do because they're in the Big East in terms of basketball. So that would also cloud that. So I do think it is going to be Utah, Arizona, Arizona State to the Big 12. I think we'll get the announcement of Oregon and Washington to the Big 10 coming very soon. There's just simply too many rumors, and these rumors started last year after the Big 10 sniped the two Pac-12 schools. Everyone was like, it's not good enough. They need a West Wing. I've been saying they need a West Wing from the beginning to balance their conference. It just makes way too much sense. That's going to get announced very likely in the coming weeks, Oregon and Washington. So that puts the Big 12 up to 16 teams, the Big 10 up to 18 teams, the SEC up to 16 teams, and then the focus shifts at that point. Well, there's two different things that are going to happen. The Big 12 is going to have 4 teams at that point, and you would think the only options for the Big 12 is to dissolve, and you would have Washington State and Oregon State both going to the Mountain West, and then the independents would be California and Stanford, or you would try and merge those 4 Pac-12 schools into the Mountain West if they could work something out. Those would be your only 2 options at that point if you are the Pac-12. And then the focus shifts to the ACC and what FSU and Clemson are trying to do. They're either trying to completely get out of their terrible TV deal. You would likely need 8 schools to come together and rip up that deal, although that's not known 100%. We don't know what the exact deal is. It's not public, so we don't know if it is 8 schools coming together to rip it up and agree to rip up the deal, or that might not even be in the contract, and at that point they would really be screwed. Or you would be looking at, some type of payment redistribution to where Clemson and FSU and some of the bigger earners in the conference, there was a stat that FSU brings in like 15% of the total revenue, but because it's all divvied up evenly, they make 7% in terms of the actual TV contract. Every team in that conference makes around 7 to 8% there when they're really bringing in a lot more. So you could give FSU and Clemson more money to make them happy. The only problem is you would be taking money from some of the lower teams that might cause a Boston college to get angry and possibly leave. And you would have to completely work all of that out because all of these teams signed on to this agreement and they're all expecting the same amount and they all agreed to it. It is very much a cluster mess right now in the ACC. But think about it. If the Big Ten gets to 18 teams, you would think there'd probably be a response from the SEC. And then when it comes to the Big Ten, there's also speculation. They get to 18 teams. I do think they're doing the right thing by saying no thank you to California and Stanford. Stanford is an interesting option to kind of pair with Northwestern with the academic prestige, but I think right now the Big Ten is saying we understand Notre Dame probably not going to happen, but we still want to leave the door open for them in the coming years. Also, a lot of people getting angry like at Notre Dame because they don't want to join a conference. It really doesn't matter. Like everything the Big Ten is going to be doing, it's based around money. If they somehow added Notre Dame to the conference, Notre Dame would bring them a lot of money. So obviously they're going to continue to be open to the idea that Notre Dame should be in their conference. You got all these fans who are like, just let Notre Dame sit out. But it's just that's not how it works. If Notre Dame wants to come in at any point, they're going to be allowed in the Big Ten, unless it gets to the point where the Big Ten is at 20 teams and you're just not going to take anymore. I think the end of the line with realignment is 20 teams, and you could have 3 different conferences having 20 teams, the Big Ten, the SEC, and then maybe also the Big 12. That would take the ACC completely dissolving if the Big 12 got to 20 teams, you would think, unless they decided to take the extra stragglers from the Pac-12. And then, the SEC, if they want to add teams, they're very likely looking at FSU, Clemson, maybe in North Carolina, maybe you start talking about Duke and some of those schools, Virginia, something like that. That's where they would go. And then the Big Ten, they want to get to 20 teams. The dream was always Notre Dame and FSU. The rumors around FSU and the Big Ten are legitimate. They are real. FSU has been the number 1 team spearheading, possibly trying to get out of their terrible TV deal. And I'm sure Clemson is not far behind them in that. The only question is, what does the actual deal look like? Can they get out of it? If enough teams agree to it, that is the big issue. But right now, the big news is Arizona. They're headed. It's a done deal. It's done, sealed, delivered. This was talked about for weeks now. After the Colorado move, Arizona was the next team. And it seems right now they're delaying it a little bit, waiting for Arizona State possibly to join them and announce the move right at the same time. Arizona State, and then the jockeying for that 16 spot in the Big 12 commences. Does San Diego State get involved? Is it just a Utah versus UConn type thing? Those have really been the main schools that I've heard for that 16 spot. Stanford is saying thanks but no thanks. We would rather be an independent. They're not interested in the Big 12, but that is going on right now. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.